Okay, we are live now. Hello, everyone. Welcome to LunarCRUSH Live. It's John and Joe. Today, we have an awesome episode with IoTeX and some of the core team and founders there. We're super excited to bring you guys all some information. We're going to start today a little bit differently, and John's going to go through a little bit of the social and some of the activity that we've seen on the project recently. And then we're going to pop the team in here, and we're going to go. And sorry for you guys that are just kind of joining on the other side. We had to restart the link. So thank you all for joining. So with that, hopefully my screen's up. Just wanted to take a moment to go over what does the last year look like for IoTeX. There's been a lot of growth. If we're looking at social volume, we're seeing just by our measurements, about 72.2% increase. And when we look at that, I'll just quickly go over some of these metrics. About a year ago, we measure social volume counts the number of mentions of IoTeX. Could be the ticker, could be the name, it could be variants of those. And so when we look at that, we saw that there's 36 and we're kind of getting into the double digits, and then we kind of kept moving up. And then we saw a huge spike back here to 2,890 back in May. And overall, the trend is up when we just look at the number of social mentions every single day. And a lot of that is like top level posts. And when we dive deeper into the engagement, what engagement looks at is deeper level interactions, things like comments and retweets, upvotes on Reddit, things like that. And so when we look at that, there's been some spikes throughout the year. On the low end, you're talking about 100,000, and the highest that we've seen so far is of almost 4 million engagements, which is great. And overall, when we look at engagement, it's up 105% year over year. When we look at our alt rank, which looks at the market performance of the coin relative to Bitcoin, as well as community activity. What we look at over time with this is more trends, and it's actually kind of going down a little bit, which is great. You want to be number one. And we're seeing that it typically ranks in the top 400 coins as far as the alt rank goes, which is really positive and really strong. It's really low quite a few times. When we look at shared links, and this is the number of shared links that we've been measuring, that's up a lot. So I'm going to assume this has something to do with the IoT camera that I want to talk more about. But there's a lot of, this is up almost 1,600%. And what this looks at is the number of uniquely shared links that people are posting out there. And so these links could be anything. They could be news, they could be a block explorer, they could be anything. And so what we're seeing here is that there's a pretty big increase. And back in May, we saw 659 unique links shared. So that's pretty exciting. When we look at what people are talking about, the different types of terms they're using, mainnet, IoTeX, the UCAM, there you go, Internet of Trusted Things. So a lot of different things out here going on, pretty exciting. A lot of news about the UCAM. So we're seeing quite a few headlines there. And when we look at the influencers, and these are the individuals posting all that stuff I just showed you. Yes, number one over the last year is IoTeX. But we got Johnny Woo, Crypto Boss, KM Vision, Hi3, Bitcoin Trapper. And if we go down a little bit further, we've got Raullen, and I see Larry on there. And so, and with that, why don't we bring them on? All right. Boom, boom, boom. We're just adding people in all over the place.
Added and ready.
What's up, everyone?
Great to be here, guys. Thank you so much for having us.
Great to be here. Great to see you. I don't know if you guys can see Jing's video. It looks black to me, but I'm going to try to remove and add it real quick here. Very cool. Well, I want to introduce everyone real quick. We'll kind of go around the table a little bit and introduce you guys and let you tell us a little bit about yourselves and how you interact with IoTeX and what your roles are there. So I'm just going to go counterclockwise. Let's start with Larry up there in the upper right. Larry, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sounds good. Hey guys, good morning. Thank you so much for having IoTeX on the LunarCRUSH Live today. My name is Larry, founding member and head of business development at IoTeX. So just a little background on myself. I grew up in Los Angeles, in Torrance, not in Orange County like you guys, but pretty close. But then spent some time on the East Coast. Went to school at MIT. Spent 5 years in management consulting in New York before joining IoTeX here in Silicon Valley about a couple years ago. So my role on the team is working with our network of partners, whether it's chip and device manufacturers or just general blockchain partnerships. So I'll leave it to the co-founders to dive in a little bit more on their roles and what IoTeX is as a whole.
Awesome. Raullen, why don't you go next and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So this is Raullen, CEO and co-founder of IoTeX. A little bit background about myself. I did my school in Canada, basically focused on cryptography research, in the past 10 years from U Waterloo. Then I came to the Bay Area, joined Google, Oracle, and Uber, stayed there for quite a few years, leading teams, doing lots of security and privacy compliance stuff, right? I'm a very early Bitcoin adopter, for mining the coins back in 2008. And 2000 to 2017, actually made another two co-founder, Jing and Kevin, who is not here today. So we restarted IoTeX. So basically, we want to focus on the bring the trusted data from the physical world to the blockchain world, basically to bridge everything together.
Very cool. Very cool. Thank you for being here. And Jing.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jing, co-founder of IoTeX. Thank you so much for having me. It's a great opportunity to share with your community about IoTeX. Some of my background, I spent 7 years in Silicon Valley as a venture capitalist and investing in all the frontier tech companies and trained. So basically, we invest in cybersecurity, AI, VR, AR, and IoT, and blockchain. So we start to look at blockchain back in 2015. But at that time, it's not very serious. We didn't see this. We were really kind of just like take over, the new platform until we see, Ethereum and have this smart contract enabled the developer platform. And also at that time, we intensively invest in, the IoT industry. And we definitely see IoT is booming, but actually, the infrastructure is still running on the centralized, platform. So that just like, we get very excited about, okay, so how blockchain will be, just like the infrastructure layer, to really push IoT moving forward. So we start to brainstorm the idea back in 2016 and met with my co-founders, Laurent, Jing Sun. Definitely, they are both, in the cryptography and also in the IoT space for a long time. And also, another co-founder called Kevin, and he's, one of the best product managers, and the growth, hacker in Facebook. So we just, start this idea back in 2017 to build up this platform specifically for IoT, blockchain platform. Yeah, it has been a long journey. We spent 3 years, building up the blockchain part, and finally we have the mainnet GA running back in this year June, and now we bring the product on top of our platform. Very happy to share more, about our vision
and we've got ours, and thank you very much for that.
It's great to know you guys got the UCAM in your hands.
Yeah,
it's a different feeling once you got it real in your hands. Yeah,
we'll probably keep it here at the office, and we'll use it. And that kind of leads me into the first question, and maybe Jing will kind of stick with you on it. We have, we interview a lot of people, we talk to a lot of projects, we're following 2,000 projects, and there's a lot of different industries that you could work towards and go into with crypto and payments and everything else that's there. A lot of people trying to disrupt, financials right now, and fintech and DeFi. You guys kind of went a little bit of a different direction, and went towards IoT. What was it? And it sounds like you were investing in that a little bit, and you understood the space. But what made you guys so passionate about starting a business in the IoT space?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Actually, just like, when we are, myself, right, as a venture capitalist, and I'm always looking for what's the next big things, right? What's the next big trend, right? So spend, 5 years back in, starting from, I think, 2014. And we clearly see, the entire world is moving forward, the, kind of robot device, smart device, intelligent, robots, they are kind of machines, they get into people's life. It's not like, it's still kind of sci-fi, but actually it's a real life, right? But also just like when the world moving towards a smart society, we also see, the infrastructure is still kind of not controlled by people, but controlled by those big tech companies, or controlled by the government surveillance system, which is really kind of the bottleneck to moving forward, and make this entire device machine society, which will work for people but not really just like become a kind of surveillance system for people. So that just like we see this as the big movement. It's kind of just like a social movement, and also just like this will be one of the biggest trend in the future, right? And we also clearly see blockchain can play a very important, or we will say the crucial role to make this happen, and make those machine and human interact with the trust. And the trust is the missing piece in this in this area. So that when we see clearly blockchain can play a very important role for the open finance, right? For the the decentralized finance area. But we also see the data privacy is one of the biggest problem for our time, for our society, and blockchain will play an even bigger role, but maybe not the short term, but for the longer term. So that just like this is our passion. And we know this is a very hard, challenge, right? When you're looking at, the space, not a lot of, kind of projects are really just working on that. But that's also, make us just, this is our motivation. Say, hey, if this is a real problem, we see this is a real trend, and we have the right team to work on that. So that we, just back 3 years ago, we start to work on that.
Well, it definitely seems like you have the right team. It seems like you guys are all super passionate. And so, Raullen, maybe tell us a little bit about why you think the relationship between blockchain and IoT is so special.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So if you see the physical world, it is a blockchain, right? If you see each day is a block, then every day is connected, right? So all the things that happen that fits into the day by the time it happens. So it's a physical blockchain. So what we want to do is basically do a crossing from the physical world, which I see as a blockchain, to the virtualized blockchain, which is IoTeX, right? So there are lots of things we can bridge from the physical one to the virtual one, and make them liquidate, make them floating around. Basically everything like the assets, the trusted data, whatever, when it's floating around, it's create a value. It goes to where it needs to be. It needs to be most. So that's how we see this from like the whole picture, right? But concretely, like we are saying like two things which are very actionable for us to work on. The first one is like Jing mentioned, own your privacy for lots of IoT devices. I think that's a very concrete action item for us to work on. So that's why we have UCAN. We can probably talk about this later. And the second one is like the trusted data from the physical world and coming to the blockchain and means this to be something treatable, like an index, like an NFT, like something else. I think that's also will show the true power of the blockchain. So that's kind of very two concrete things we are working on in terms of IoT and blockchain.
Very good. And it makes a lot of sense. And I think that leads into another question that Larry can answer for us, which is, so the marriage between blockchain and IoT, and then the first product that comes out, and I believe the first product, which is UCAM, what was around the decision to go after that space and kind of make that the first? Because there's a lot of different devices, and I was listening to some of your other podcasts. You guys were, Raullen, I think you were talking about, cars and mobility and the kind of sensors and other types of pieces that collect data. Why? And Larry, maybe talk a little bit about the camera and why, and then I think we're going to give one of these things away, or maybe a couple of these things away to some questions that came on. And yesterday, all my Twitter notifications are going through with you guys answering all those questions on the thread. So I appreciate that. But maybe talk a little bit about UCAM and the decision behind why you guys are going after that market.
Absolutely. I think just to provide a little context on what the IoT landscape looks like, right? What we're making decisions based on. So right now, there's about 20 billion IoT devices out there. Everything in our daily lives, in our daily businesses, collecting data, making things more efficient. But by 2025, that number is going to grow to about 50 billion devices. And it really pales in comparison to the amount of data that these 50 billion devices are going to be generating, right? it's estimated by 2025 that 80 zettabytes, which is 1 zettabyte is 1 trillion gigabytes. So 80 trillion gigabytes of IoT data is going to be generated to the tune of about, $1+ trillion. And if you think about it, right, why do we not own any of that value and any of that data? So that's kind of like the underpinning motivation around, decentralizing the Internet of Things, putting control back in the users, right? So if you think about that kind of criteria about which devices could we power with IoTeX that would have the most impact on people's privacy and security, it's all about things that are very sensitive to people, right? And I think our job is really easy. We just have to look at the headlines and see what everyone's freaking out about, right? Like Ring cameras, Nest cameras being hacked, health data being purchased, and who knows where it's being held, right? So we think about that from like a societal impact type of thing. We also chose UCAM because it's the hardest type of device to start with, right? If you think about the IoT space, all these devices, like the inside anatomy of them is actually very similar, right? They have some type of connection to the internet, some type of battery or power supply, some compute and storage. And that's kind of the inner workings of it, right? A camera is just a very advanced light sensor, but the amount of data that is generating and the sensitivity of that data peeking into your living room or your backyard or your doorway, these are things that need to be 100% protected. So, we get this question a lot, like, why did you start with the consumer space, which is hard, and why did you start in the hardware space, which is double hard, right? But, I think it's a challenge that we've overcome, and now the doors are wide open, right? We can take the technology we built into UCAM and build it into other form factors of cameras, doorbell, outdoor, dash cams, web cams, and also start to look into other types of IoT devices like health wearables and things like that. So that's just like a little background on, the decision-making process.
Right.
But like you said, the IoT is so vast, right? It's already $1 trillion market, and security camera industry alone is already a $250 billion market, right? So we're talking about a growing market with a need for security and privacy. And I'd like to say we've always had the vision, the foresight to be in the right place at the right time. But I think, it was, it's just a lot of understanding of the way the world works, I think, and applying that through technology.
Great. And I think it's, when you talk about that much data, it's almost like, here's the size of the universe. Like your brain can't even compute the quantity of data that you're talking about in this space and the amount of sensors and the privacy of video. I think I saw a headline the other day. I think it might have been like Amazon. Someone's got like a mini drone camera that's supposed to like fly around your house. So when you get up in the middle of the night to go to the restroom, it's just going to smoke you in the face. Like, which is just absolutely outrageous and not applicable in any way, shape, or form or manner outside of like maybe outside of your home, I guess, and like landing on the roof and coming off and on. But talk a little bit about, because I mean, you guys have the token, you have the coin, you've got, I think you've got like different layers of coins with IoTeX and Ethereum, and some of that's probably for scaling. And now you're running a hardware business, a consumer business, and you have the added kind of microeconomy of the blockchain, which was needed for the privacy. And maybe Raullen, you can answer this one or start to answer this one, and the rest of you guys can kind of add in. What's it like operating a business with all of these facets and your team and bringing all of these things together, and how do you guys make that work?
Yeah, that's a great question. To be honest, like we want to start with Tesla, right? We just haven't convinced Elon Musk yet, so we start with Pebble. But like generally speaking, like we want be like the layer that powers different devices. We want power Tesla, we want power UCAN, we want power another like maybe 10 devices, basically to bring the same concept, privacy and the security, basically into those devices. Because like we work with people from this industry, like this IoT manufacturing industry, they are very old kind of, mindset people that have a very old technology in their hands, right? So they don't really understand what does DID mean, for example, what does confidential computing mean, right? What does blockchain mean even? So we see there is a huge chance for us basically to, blend in our technology into like a product, a service, an API, a layer anyway, right? And putting them under the IoT devices that people use to really benefit from the people who use the devices, as well as like the manufacturers who manufacture the devices. So that's our value proposition actually for IoTeX. Yeah, in short.
Okay, so it's almost like you're also building the layer underneath to power other potential hardware that people want to utilize. So that's why that portion of the business could potentially be a completely different side of what you guys are working on.
Right. Like my favorite example is the autonomous vehicle, right? I'm trying to convince Elon Musk, for example, is if you can have our technology built into Tesla and have Tesla to run by himself, then everybody can just buy a Tesla, put it in the home, and for use for sure. And when it's idle, it can just go out there to do some Uber type of business by itself, and everything's settled down on the blockchain side, paying through like an IoTeX. So that's kind of like an ultimate vision like we have. So yeah, but we are getting there step by step.
Yeah, and talking about data and thinking about someone like Tesla, and John and I talk about this kind of all the time, which just the quantity of video data that's being collected, and some people I think forget, how accurate they're going to be and how far ahead they are. It's not when you're driving. For here we have a big freeway called the 405, and when you're driving down that, it's not. People are like, well, what if there's a change in the in the lanes or something else that happened? It's like, well, it's not just taking data from yesterday or last month. It's someone just drove through there. Another human just drove through there with their car, and it might be seconds ago. And so it's just this real-time adjusting network. And so I think, how does that work with their video is probably stored somewhere. It seems like there could be that potentially might be out in the public and out in the open, maybe not as much privacy, or potentially something happens there, it wouldn't be as big of a deal. But when you're talking about consumers and in the home, is this part of the value? And maybe Larry, you could talk about, is this part of the value proposition that you guys are going after in the marketing and the unique selling position? Is this is in your house, and like you were talking about Nest cameras before. Is that resonating with people?
I think so, right? The way I think about this is, regardless of what devices you have, there's you do want to own that data, but there's different tiers of like seniority as far as what data you absolutely should be owning and what needs to be protected, right? Let me give you an example. All this Facebook, Instagram, TikTok stuff, if someone has history about what I'm looking at online, it's weird, it's scary, it's weird when you talk about something and it shows up on your ads, but honestly, it provides you something, right? It provides you a tiny bit of user experience. I'm fine with that. It'd be better if I got some kickback for advertisers that show me stuff, but having people know my Spotify listening history is okay, right? But if we're talking about footage from my living room, or when my mail comes every day, when my dog goes to sleep, nobody needs to know this stuff, right? And I think we're becoming so jaded these days that, okay, everyone knows everything about me, so let me just stop caring, right? I think a great quote that encapsulates how I feel about this is from Edward Snowden. And he says that not caring about your privacy because you have nothing to hide is like saying you don't care about free speech because you have nothing to say, right? You only need these fundamental rights until you absolutely need them, or they're stripped away from you, right? So I think that the fundamental right and reclaiming our right to privacy is growing day by day. And when you go down to the source of what makes people antsy, right? Like, I always think about launching these new products as kind of an intersection between technology, culture, and regulation, right? It's like, what are people ready for? What's hitting people's hearts the most, right? It's probably the safety of their families. And when you see things on the internet, like a camera gets breached and a hacker is literally talking to your kid through the camera, it's just not okay, right? So like,
not okay.
Again, our job is kind of simple, right? We just have to look towards the headlines and see where is a traditional world that is operating in these kind of centralized models where all of our data is decrypted on a centralized server. Like, where does that impact people the most? Let's address those. And eventually over time, I think, the entire world will start to decentralize the areas that really mean a lot. But, just the last point on this thing, I think that as far as the centralized, like the availability of our data in a decrypted manner, I think this is the root of all problems here. And this is something that we actually solve with UCAM, right? UCAM is not just a blockchain product. It's the first absolutely private home security camera. And we use blockchain end-to-end encryption and edge computing. It sounds like buzzwords, but it's not, right? So the way this works is that we do not decrypt your data anywhere except the devices that you own, meaning your mobile device, right? So there's no centralized processing. Your data doesn't exist in decrypted form. We can't access it. And it's almost the purest form of privacy today, right? Like a lot of people rely on GDPR and regulations to protect their privacy, but we feel that, you know, a lot of the promises that have been given to us by corporations are just, you know, they're ghost promises, right? We've never seen them. It's almost like pretending, you know, it's almost like Zoom telling us they have end-to-end encryption is like McDonald's telling us they have 100% beef, right? It's like, okay, we get it, but I don't necessarily believe you because you haven't proven to us in the past through your actions that this is something that, you know, so I just urge everyone to take, you know, just like you read the nutrition facts before putting things in your bodies, do the same thing with your IoT devices. At least understand where your data is going, who has it in decrypted form. And, you know, it's a little pessimistic to always think about, you know, what are people doing behind the scenes, but that's exactly what these centralized servers are. They're black boxes. We don't know what's going inside of them. And, you know, I think that's the point of blockchain, to really remove that element.
Yeah, it's the protection side of it. And, you know, and maybe Jing, you can touch on this a little bit. I mean, you talk about some of these corporations. I mean, are they too far down the road with the centralization and your data? Or do you think that, you know, one of these larger corporations will, like an Amazon or someone, will potentially step into this space in some way, shape, or form and say, take the lead? You know, I feel like there's an opportunity there for them, but or do you just think, you know, and maybe I kind of think that it's just too far down the road with the way that they've operated and how all of our data is there, that there's no turning back?
That's a great question. When you look back, just like all the big trend, you know, internet, mobile internet, AI, all those big trends, you cannot leverage on the big tech company. They will take a lead. Why? Because they already create a traditional or existing business model. This model work for them, or they will benefit most from the existing model. Right now, the internet company, they are benefit from the current model, which is just like they provide the free internet service, right? And in exchange, they will get, you know, they will leverage on users' data for the ads business. That's their model. It's not like, you know, from the technology wise, they are not advanced enough to implement such type of the technology. It's about this will be against their current model, and they have no kind of, you know, benefits or motivation to do that. So that just like the entire space has to be from, you know, the long tail or from the newcomers, the new innovators together with the long tail, you know, kind of players. So in our space, for example, right, we have big players like, you know, Google, they are doing the Nest, right? We have, you know, Amazon, they are doing the Rings, but you will see we have hundreds of other smaller, medium size of manufacturer. They are not really in the, you know, the ads business. Their job is they want to create, you know, certain type of devices, and they want their community to like their devices so that they can sell more. Right? Or just maybe they will also have a kind of, you know, other add-ons, value services people can pay for, right? So that just like, you know, we are talking with hundreds of such type of manufacturers. And then we get, hey, you know, what's your needs? What's your pain point in general, right? And this is our pain point is, you know, we don't really need to, you know, take advantage of users' data. We want to protect their data so that we can, you know, get the trust from our users. But actually, just like we are not that advanced in the technology, we want, you know, some kind of alternative ways, you know, to store people's data, for example, right? To get people trust our brand because they don't have the big brand, you know, people already trust yet. So that's kind of just like how we come to the consensus, say, hey, you know, privacy is something their people or their users really need it. And then, you know, it's a missing part and they are not that capable of enable this data. And then IoTeX kind of just like kick in and say, hey, you know, you don't need to worry about that. We will have this, you know, full stack and easily integrated with your firmware. And you will take care, you will focusing on, you know, the functionality, the hardware functionality, how to address, you know, your, you know, kind of your customers' specific needs, like, you know, if this is a camera for pet or for baby, or maybe just like for, you know, just put it in your car. So this is not something just that we are focusing on, but we are focusing on enable this, this new innovation, which will bring the benefit to their customer. And here we solve two problems, right? one problem is, who will really own the data? Is that the big tech company? Is that the manufacturer? Or is that, has to be the user themselves, because they purchase the product, and they purchase the product and then they put the product in their home, right? And who will take the ownership? And then the second problem is if we say, hey, this is user will take the ownership, how to achieve that? Previously, they based on say, hey, for the big tech, you will see they also had promise, so-called, they also say, hey, actually this is encrypted data, and we will not touch your data. But this is only just based on the terms and kind of the promises. But when you look at the tech stack, right? If they say encryption, but who will have the decryption key? For all those other products, the decryption key still have one for user maybe, but they have a backup for the big tech companies, which means that the big tech companies, at least a group of people within their kind of corporations, they will have the access to your data. That's not really just like right, but so that we already have a lot of the accidents. It's not just like maybe by intention, but this is just like accident, from the internal and then breach into the database. The major thing is because they don't, from the technology wise, they don't really have this concept implemented. Right.
Yeah, it's a great point. And I think something that a really good point that you're making there, and I think people tend to forget the history of even the way that data worked, where I don't know, like we heard this at like a Blockstack summit like many years ago, and someone was talking about dumb terminals, right? And you used to have a mainframe, and that mainframe is really where all the data was, and then it just went to your monitor that was at your desk, and that's how you kind of interfaced with everything. And then as processing speed increased, we went down to, hey, now all the processing is happening on the computer, and everyone had hard drives and zip drives and all of these things. And now we've actually almost reverted back, and the cloud is just the dumb terminal that's somewhere on a server far away, but you're not interfacing. You're interfacing with it, and they have the data, versus basically, you almost being like your own API. And people you're giving someone access to your data when and where you want, and how much you want to give them access to it. And I can't think of a more important place to do that outside of something like a video. I mean, man, I could already see the ad right now for you guys with the camera and the baby, and where does the data go? And man, I feel like it's really just a perfect place to start with this. And I mean, maybe if you guys could talk a little bit about it. John and I worked at big companies before, and we know you're going against someone like an Amazon technically with a cloud cam, and Google with the Nest. I mean, these are massive companies, but startups always have a competitive advantage with decision making and the speed at which you can make decisions. And that's really why startups are successful, is because you don't have to take 4.5 weeks to set up one meeting, and then that person takes 4.5 more weeks to set up another meeting with a stakeholder. Then maybe your idea doesn't even get there. And maybe Raullen, you can talk. I mean, you sound like you worked at a couple of big companies before. What are you trying to do differently? Hi there. Hi, super cute. What are you trying to do different at IoTeX with just organization and people and information versus what you saw? And maybe talk about a little bit of what you saw at the other companies that you want to do differently, and maybe some of the stuff that you thought was really cool.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I work at like a company with 20K people, like 2K people, 200 people. Now we started with like 4 people, right? So it's very different culture-wise and also like organization-wise. So basically for us, we are innovators, we are disruptors to a lot of things. So we are just moving fast and break things. We don't care too much about like the things you were talking about, some political schedule a meeting, get everybody on the consensus and have a very long hierarchical process to do a decision making. No, we are not, right? We are just moving fast. We are very flat. Everybody on the team just throwing ideas, throwing new technologies, throwing contribute their skills, and we just putting everything together to contribute to the vision of the company, of the IoTeX basically. So I think this to some people is very chaotic, right? Because everything, so many dynamic pieces is just moving around. To some people, it's very enjoying like this kind of working style. So like I said, like we are innovators. We are just breaking things. Yeah.
Yeah,
I have a question
go ahead,
around
John.
the AI side of things, and I'll tell you a story that I had. I had someone running from the police, and they ran through my yard one day, and I have Nest cams, and it picked them up. It caught them, and when it caught them, it sent me an alert on my phone that there was a moving object in the yard. It was a person, and it actually caught the police officer running through my yard, which is pretty funny. But what ended up happening was I ended up talking to the police, and the first thing they asked me was, "Can we see your camera footage?" And so we're talking about a privacy thing here, but I'd be curious, how do you guys deal with cognition and AI and object detection? And if you could tell us a little more about how that could work.
Oh man,
Yeah, maybe I could.
Yeah, go for it, Larry, if you want to talk about it.
Sure. Yeah, I think this is a great question, right? This is definitely a big pillar about how we compute over data kind of in a confidential manner, right? But just to take one step back, what we talked about up to now is kind of these own your data devices, right? That are powered by different components of the platform, specifically like decentralized identity, authorizations, and just blockchain as a whole, right? So this is where we're at today. We kind of have these different devices, UCAM and another decentralized asset tracking device called Pebble Tracker. And these are finally allowing people to own their data, right? But once you own your data, what can we do with it, right? We kind of have three options here. One is to keep your data absolutely private, which is what people are doing with UCAM. It's already a benefit of owning your data means also owning your privacy if you want that route, right? The second one is we want people to be able to use their data in a privacy preserving fashion, right? So if I own my healthcare data, for example, that's a wish for everyone, right? But I'm not a doctor. I can't read my body fat scanner. I can maybe look at myself in the mirror and say, oh, I'm gaining some weight. But aside from that, that's the best I can do, right? So there is another technology called confidential computing, and IoTeX just joined the confidential computing consortium along with people like ByteDance, Facebook, Google, and NVIDIA, all these massive companies looking into this space, right? But that's really about how do we compute over encrypted data, meaning we can get the insights that we desire without ever exposing the raw data. To your example, John, about if you wanted to be analyzing people's faces on your camera, but you don't want anyone to have the raw images, raw footage, you can do that all in kind of the confidential computing server, which is designed to be attestable, verifiable. Basically anything that runs inside of this confidential computing server is assumed to be trusted, right? It's the most pure form of the technologically guaranteed trusted third party, right? So that's something we're looking very deeply into, is how to allow people to analyze the data that they own real time in a privacy preserving fashion. And the last pillar, I think that's really interesting, and we spent a lot of September building it out, is the last thing you can do with your data is you can tokenize it and you can sell it, right? And maybe this doesn't make as much sense for footage from your living room, but say there was a social platform, John, that where you can post funny things about camera interactions, right? Like I saw this intruder running. There's a lot of people tokenizing art on the blockchain now that questionable how unique they are. But if you have that video one day in the future, you can probably tokenize it. You can add it to a repository. You can sell it. If you're going back to that automotive discussion, right? This is where it starts to get really interesting. Is your car right now has about 30 electrical control units, everything that does your steering wheels, seatbelts, airbags, whatever. If you drive the same route every day for 365 days, that data that you're collecting with your car, the GPS coordinates, the temperature, the speed, the traffic, all of that has value, right? You just don't really realize it. Who does it have value to? Food delivery platforms, transportation, logistics, Uber, Lyft, they're dying for this data. All those cars with the video cameras on top collecting vehicle data. The reason why Tesla is already the largest manufacturer in the world is not because they're cars, it's because of the data, right? So taking control of our data, keeping some of it private, using some of it privately, and monetizing some that has value to others. This is the future, right? But it all starts with that foundation of own your data devices. And that's why UCAM, I think, is really cool. It's finally introducing people to at least the first pillar. And the really big goal for IoTeX over the next years to come is to build out those other pillars, or actually provide the infrastructure for people to build out those more application focused layers on top of the trusted devices that we offer.
No, I was listening to Jing earlier talk about 2017. I think you said 2017, the idea came about for IoTeX. And I remember that year I was at CES in Vegas in January, walking through the IoT floor. And I remember seeing, there must have been, I don't know, 200, 300 companies there. There's a lot. And amazing stuff, right? Really cool ideas, you know, all the way down to automatically water your pots and plants and all these things. And I remember going from booth to booth, and each of them had their own app. Each of them had their own app. So, and then on my head, I'm thinking as the consumer, as the person that's not, you know, I'm paying for these things. If I were to buy all this stuff and then setting them all up, and I could just imagine all the conflicts with my Wi-Fi network at home. And then what do? Do I have 38 apps on my phone to independently control these things? Or maybe I build my own thing with APIs from all of them or whatever it is. It's so complicated. And so I wonder what your perspective is from on the user experience of all this. You know, you have UCAM.
Yeah.
Let's say you launch a few more products. You know, one of the things that Nest does pretty good is that UX layer of connecting it all together, controlling your cameras, controlling your home thermostat, all of that. They spend a lot of time on that UX layer. And so I'm curious what your perspective is on where you guys see that moving forward for your company.
That's a great question. We still remember, you know, I think the partner from, you know, Union Square, you know, Ventures. They say, hey, you know, when it's not about just like people don't care about privacy or, you know, data ownership. It's about just like, you know, if you you know, need to complicate the process or just like, you know, add the complexity so that just like people will have this ownership, then just like this barrier will be very high. So which means just like, you know, we cannot kind of bring in some benefit to users at the same time ask them to sacrifice, you know, the user experience. So that just like, so right now the problem is, you know, kind of a lot of the smart devices, it's functional, but it's not kind of just like, you know, very intuitive, just like for all the normal people. It's still just like a long process to do that. And especially just like when we bring in the privacy into, you know, this user experience, it make it even more complicated when you look at all the other, you know, kind of, you know, products. If they add in, you know, more kind of features, and then this will complicate the user experience. And actually for the past 1 year, right, besides the fundamental technology, we spend a lot of time just try to simplify the entire user experience so that just like people will have zero cost, kind of zero just like, you know, learning cost when they just like really using a blockchain powered product. But actually they don't have to. You don't need to say, hey, you know, you try to demonstrate this is a blockchain, you know, kind of product so that it has to be complicated. Everything will be underlying, and then the user, they just enjoy, you know, the very simple kind of user experience. So that just comparing UCAN to other camera, actually we removed, you know, a big step, which is just like you have to create the account, email, and password so that you can, you know, you needed to type in a lot of your personal information so that you can start to use your camera. But actually for UCAN, you don't need to. You don't even need to just like type in your password. It's automatically, they will just like assign you with a private key, and then you just like, maybe just like keep it, you know, safely, right? And then just like you don't really need to remember your account or password because it is secured by blockchain, you know, kind of DID, decentralized, you know, identity.
Yeah.
So that's just like, you know, all the things will be very important, you know, when you bring the new innovation. You don't need to kind of just like, you know, make the entry barrier higher for people to really just like learn how to use it, right? This is one thing. And the second thing is, you know, how people use multiple devices. Our concept is still you need to simplify the entire, user experience. For example, just like, you know, for the app, we also just like co-develop the app. Right. And actually just like this app, we provide the flexibility. They can add, you know, as many as possible devices and from different type of the devices in one single kind of app. Right. But also just like we give the flexibility for our manufacturer. If they say, hey, you know, they want to have their own, they want to develop their own app, they can do that. So that this is kind of just like customers choice, right? Give them the flexibility. If they like one single app, they can use it. But if they say, hey, they rather have multiple app, with multiple kind of interfaces, they can also choose that. But just like at the end, we put a human in the center, so they will be the owners to take ownership of all the data, to take ownership of their devices, and to make the decision how they use it, 100% private or use it confidentially, or just like they can even exchange certain type of their data, which is their property already. We already claim this, they are the owners, so those data are their property. They can exchange, through the blockchain easily.
Yeah, John, just to piggyback on this a little bit, right? You guys mentioned the flying Amazon camera, right? Yeah. I think that a lot of people that are in the hardware space or even the consumer product space are, at a fork in the road, right? Do we go down the Amazon route of adding, innovative features that people may or may not want, or do we hunker down and go kind of security and privacy and human-centered, right? And I really fundamentally believe that some people will go down either road of the fork, but the security and privacy conscious people, that crowd is growing, right? Like I always compare it to my parents, right? It's like my dad is an engineer, my mom is not, right? So the education part of bringing people into the fold of understanding why security and privacy is needed. Sometimes that barrier is too high, right? If I have to explain end-to-end encryption to my mom, it's maybe it'll take all Thanksgiving break, right? But for the people that know what's going on in decentralized servers, they're going to be making the conscious buying decisions very soon, to reject the narrative of flying cameras, right? Like, why are you making a flying camera when all I want is privacy as a feature? So we're betting that segment is going to be growing a lot. And maybe in the future, we can have flying privacy cameras, but not a flying camera without privacy first.
Yeah, no, you're hitting on a product points that you're not really too worried about at this point with a camera. You're more worried about, how is the app faster? And like, I don't know if you guys have tried Amazon's Cloud Cam and some other stuff. I mean, it's slow. It's not loading videos on time. You're only getting snippets of videos. There's so many different pain points, like storage of your data and how you have to pay for it. And it's just another cloud storage piece. And I know you guys are kind of work through some of that stuff, but I feel like your opportunity to monetize in interesting different ways outside of just paying for the device are kind of interesting and special. And so I'm interested and eager to see how you guys kind of work through that. So it's really exciting. So where can people buy this thing and how much does it cost? I'm on the site here, kind of checking it out. But let people know a little bit about just like the camera cost and just a little bit more about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we had some plans to give out some cameras away live too. So maybe we can reserve the last part for that. But Jing has been the closest person to UChem. So maybe she can walk you through the website and the purchase process.
Yeah, so, we are very happy, finally, through several months of beta testing and also, our pre-order process is started, back in April, right? And we also delivered the first batch of pre-order. Finally, we already just like bring this UChem, on one of, I think the largest, right? The largest, kind of the e-commerce platform, Amazon US. So that just like all the US, people, they can easily just, get into Amazon, right? And search UChem IoTeX, and then, you will see the product. And it's under, $50. And then, within 2 days, it will be in your hands. Very fast, right? Prime, service. And then for all the international, people, we have this UChem.IoTeX.io, which is, our own store. And you can also go to our own store to purchase, and it supports the international global, shipment. And the shipment will be a little bit maybe slower because, it's international, and we work with EasyShip, which is the largest, logistic service provider, and they will deliver to each of your countries. I think they have very big kind of most of the country regions they will cover, right? And also very soon, maybe next week, right? We will start very exciting community campaigns. Everybody can participate, right? So for blockchain, there is one very important the spirit is about bottom up. It's about the community driven, participation driven. So that just like we already have hundreds of early adopters, and then they will be our best ambassador, right? So they already start to adopt this idea, the product, and start to use, and then they will share this product to their network, and we will encourage the entire community. You can start to try the product first, and you like it, spread the word, and then we will also benefit all those kind of people to refer the product to your network, and we will have very exciting referral program kickstart starting from next week.
Awesome. And yeah, no, your shipping was amazing, Larry. When you sent that over to us, I was jealous of how quickly the confirmations, the tracking, it was very, very clean, very awesome. So great experience there.
That's a whole nother side of the business, man. Especially when we're going on Amazon now, it's like, the process is so delicate. And that's something that, we've, luckily we have a great partner named Tenvis. Their last product on Amazon, they sold about 2 to 3 million units over the past few years. It has like 6,000 plus 4-star reviews. So they're really helping us with that process. But, I really understand, launching this first consumer product, why people go on Shark Tank, both for the funding aspect, both for the guidance aspect. Like when we first went to CES, right? This year, UCAM won the CES Innovation Award for cybersecurity and personal privacy. Awesome. So we had a lot of traffic going to our booth, right? And, a lot of buyers from Japan, from Canada, et cetera. And they put these terms in front of us. It's like, okay, we want to baby buy $1 million UCAM, $1 million of UCAMs, and we're going to pay you 180 days later. Is that cool? Or like, no, it's not cool. So it's like the entire thing. It's like you start to understand why it's important to start small and scale up as you go, right? It's like everyone expects the massive Kickstarter launch where we sell 3 million units first week, but it's not how these businesses work, right? It's a repeatable progress over time. So that's something that we're looking forward to bringing the community into. And, I think once people get this device in their hands, it's just a whole different experience, right? It's not a D app. It's a real physical product that really people are enjoying. So,
I'll give you just a little bit of a perspective, because I brought the one that you guys sent us home, and I didn't even see my kids last night. And so I said, hey guys, I have a surprise for you. And I handed them the box, and they both lit up, and they were all excited. And my oldest son ran to his room to go set it up.
That's awesome.
Wow.
So like they loved the box, they loved the packaging, and they thought the camera was really cool. And so there's already it's a moment of joy to unbox the cam. So very exciting.
Do you know what's even cooler? Your kid is now a blockchain user.
Love it. Love it.
You know what I mean? And that's
he might own more crypto than any of us. So
he probably does. He's probably also going to take the key. Yeah. He's going to take the private key and not tell me what it is. So I'm sure this is going to go great. Yeah.
But how cool is that the younger generation is learning about the concept of a private key, right? The last story I think I'll share is like throughout this process, one thing that's been really interesting is sharing the blockchain technology to non-crypto people, right? As Jing said, we beta tested this thing with hundreds of people in Silicon Valley over the past few months. And when you introduce them to the concept of a private key, right, they think, oh, this is a key to my privacy. This is the key to my private information, aka my videos. There's no strings attached, like this is the key to your magical internet money that's built on proof of infinite stake. That's what really confuses a lot of people, right? But if you introduce people to the fact that this private key is the only one that exists and you have it and it's the key to your privacy, then they're like, why don't I have private keys for everything, right? So I think that introducing people to the concept of blockchain in a way that's not cryptocurrency, meaning privacy and security first, then you can introduce them to cryptocurrency after, right? Something that they really care about is private, their videos. Then they'll draw it's kind of like Inception, right? You insert that idea and they're like, okay, I can have this with my funds now. I can have this with other stuff. Then I think like the whole onboarding process is very important. So we're watching this closely, but I think that's a really big opportunity to convert a lot of everyday people into crypto users or blockchain users, right? So
agreed. We feel that same way about DeFi. It's kind of like, hey, I can earn more money on over here using a DeFi product versus my bank. We're not there yet to where the trust is the same, but someday we will be. And I'll earn 8% over here, but I'll earn 0.05% at my bank. Where are you going to put your money? And you don't even need to mention crypto. You just need to say you're getting a better rate. So I love the use case.
You have to address a problem people really care or they care most. And then just like, they start to have the interest to know about, your product. And then naturally they will start to learn, what's new about, this new innovation, new product.
Yep.
No, I think you guys are going after, being in the home, and the trust there is just step one. And then where it can go from there with voice and, like encryption and your keys. And like you're saying, if you have 1,000 private keys, why not be stored, in the home in a device that only you can access? So I think the future is very bright. And with that, Larry, Raullen, Jing, IoTeX, you guys, thank you so much for joining us. This was awesome. I had such a good time learning a little bit more about you guys and IoTeX in general. So I can't wait to have you back. And I think we might have to have your other co-founder, was it Kevin that you mentioned? You said head of product and growth hacker. I think John and him could just do your own like 4-hour probably podcast around product and growth hacking. So we'll have to do it again. But thank you guys.
Wait, Joe, we got some cams to give away.
Oh yeah, we got some cams to give away. I think we agreed to have some questions answered. So maybe we just do some rapid fire answers for these just to wrap up the hour.
So I put in our private chat, if you guys can see, there's a link to the Twitter, the tweet that has some of the questions in there. If you guys want to pick them, since you're giving them away, or I'm happy to pick them, but go for it.
Sure. Yeah, I'll pick one, and you can pick the next one, John. I just see one that's pretty straightforward here. So from Road to Bitcoin, congratulations on winning a UCAM. What are the next real use cases or IoT devices we can see on the IoTeX network? So maybe something we didn't talk about today, Raullen or Jing. So what IoT devices are you excited to see on the IoTeX network?
Yeah, so actually, just like on the background, I just mentioned we have been in discussion with hundreds of the manufacturer, right? So but the first thing is we make the first product right? But in terms of the sector, we definitely see healthcare is important for the other product related, and also those enterprise directions. Asset tracking is very important, and those are kind of just like help us to move to the second phase and the third phase, which means just like you are not only kind of own the privacy, but how to use the data, right? And how to just like even just like make the data tradable, for the other people, which is the data will be benefit to the other people. So I think Larry already mentioned, we will have the second product very soon, Pebble Tracker, which is it's a different use cases, which will not be the consumer facing, but more enterprise and developer facing. And this Pebble Tracker have all the sensors and can GPS, thermotech, all the sensors, and then they will be served as the proof of the truth and to keep the integrity of the data in the entire supply chain industry. Very, very exciting about that. And also we will have more kind of consumer products related to camera, or just like expand to the other areas. Just stay tuned. We will have new announcement very soon.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much, Road to Bitcoin, for the question. John, do you want to fire off
Road
another
to
one?
Bitcoin.
Yeah, sure. I got this one from Viach Crypto 2. Who's asking, what do you think is unique about the DID identification system, and what makes a DID system better than what competitors offer? I think that's a really interesting question when you start to think through identity and privacy and how all this chains together. So what are your thoughts there?
Raullen, this one's definitely for you.
Yeah, so that's an interesting question. Basically, back to the origin of things. So for build up trust, there are two ways. Either like a very hierarchical way, so that's a kind of PKI-CA approach we're all taking today. Basically, everybody trusts the CA, trusts the root, right? So you can trust the others. Another one is called Web of Trust. It was there like early maybe 60s, but not so popular until now. It's called Web of Trust, meaning like I trust Larry, Larry trusts Jing, Jing trusts John, for example. Then I can trust John, right? It's just pass on the trust to another people more in a P2P fashion. So DID's philosophy is along the second one is Web of Trust. So it wasn't that possible before the invention of blockchain, but now it becomes very natural and popular, especially in the device space. For example, how this device trusts another device, so they can do some other guy in the middle, then this guy trusts this device, so these two can build up the trust. So that's kind of magic behind the idea. You don't have to trust like a centralized authority anymore. So which can be compromised or which can play some dirty games in the middle. You just trust like based on your friends. So that's kind of thing like makes the idea very magical.
Yeah, something very unique about our DID is a lot of people are only doing decentralized identity for people, right? Which is obviously very attractive if you want to own your identity outright. But we're also doing DID for devices, which allows devices to have an identity that's standardized and can communicate with humans and other devices. And that's kind of where we see these human-machine interactions. And DID is an interoperability mechanism that drives a lot of that, right? And maybe the last question here, I don't know how to pronounce this, but
it's all good.
Yeah, it's kind of a similar question, but maybe I could choose a different one. Shilla Haka, betrefs.com. Congrats on winning a UCAM. I'm from Africa, and we are technologically backwards. Have you identified any constraints to the proper functioning of UCAM in remote parts of the world? So I think the question here is, what are the minimum requirements to get started with the UCAM anywhere in the world? I think, from my perspective, I think, obviously going back to the anatomy of these IoT devices, right? UCAM's not too different from any other smart device out there, connected device. You need some connectivity to the internet, whether that's through Wi-Fi, cellular, Bluetooth, a lot of these other kinds of connections. You need some battery or power supply. So UCAM is a plug-in wall camera that's always on, never turns off. And you need some type of network compute storage, right? So depending on your specific circumstances, right? Like UCAM comes with both Wi-Fi and Ethernet options. It's very flexible. It comes with a mounting kit. We see people using it indoors and slightly outdoors. You don't really want it to get rained on too much, but it's a very flexible kind of product, right? So I don't know, Jing, do you have any other thoughts on how UCAM applies in international regions?
Yeah, so UCAM right now can work in most of the country. To be honest, we haven't tested in some of the African country. Maybe just like with specific requests, we will also just like testing what's their for example the network environment or the storage environment. If those kind of basic conditions they can meet, and then it should be no problem. But we do test it just like right now. You can already be delivered to over 30 countries. Right, so across the North America, South America, Australia, Europe, and Asia, right? So we will be happy to see several first kind of users in Africa, and we will also just like our engineer team can work on that to optimize the experience in different regions.
Awesome. Yeah, so those 3 winners, congrats on your UCAMs. We'll be following up with you on Twitter, and just got to get your address to ship you the product. So thank you so much for the questions.
Awesome. Well, really appreciate you guys passing those out, and I know everyone will be super excited to get them, just like John's kids. So thank you so much for doing that, and thank you so much for joining us. And sorry, I forgot about that at the end. I was trying to be cognizant of time, but thank you guys so much. Appreciate it. Hopefully, we can get you guys on again. This is awesome. Congratulations on all your success. It was so nice to meet you all. Thank you again.
Yeah, I just want to say we love LunarCRUSH. I think everyone should be checking out LunarCRUSH more on a daily basis, and we really look forward to what you guys are launching soon too, because you guys are really innovating in the community metric space. So much appreciated.
We have a lot in the works right now. You're going to see a lot over the next few weeks here, and it sounds like you guys have some campaigns that we'll be tracking over the next few weeks here. So looking forward to that.
Awesome.
Thank you, everyone. And thank you everyone for listening.
Thank you so much.